Hey everyone, so much to tell you about on today's show. We have big events happening this weekend, from a huge fundraiser for the Alzheimer's Association to a lupus walk in Aiken to a big clay shoot raising money for children with chronic and terminal illnesses. Former Grovetown softball standout Eve Gallo will be here to tell us about Clays for Kids, a fundraiser for the Outdoor Dream Foundation. All this and more coming up on Jenny, starting right now. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Jenny Montgomery. A local podcast, Chewing the Fat with Big Robb, is in its third season now. The setup is this: everyone has a story to tell, and that can sometimes lead us to dark places. Robb has conversations that break down those beautiful and often messy stories and uncovers what people do to help keep the darkness at bay. Recently, I had the pleasure of being his guest. Take a listen.
As far as on a regular basis of keeping out the darkness, I think that I go through phases where the anxiety does take over. The job has become too much.
Yeah.
The stories about terrorism and this and that and everything else just begin to take over. I'm thinking about it all the time. One thing that I do, Robb, is I don't go home and turn on the cable news channels.
Yeah.
I watch HGTV. I watch the Property Brothers. I mean, I can't be in a 24-hour news cycle anymore because it will completely affect me.
Yeah.
I have to have a break from it.
Yeah.
And I am so happy to turn the tables on Robb Smith today and have him here on my show. Robb grew up in Augusta, got into radio while he was still in high school, eventually taking jobs in Greenville and Birmingham before making his way back here to the Garden City. Robb is here right now on the red couch. Robb, you have worked in television, you act, you do commercials, you love photography, you love cooking, you love your family. You are just, you're just a man of so many different talents. And it's awesome that you are here. How did you land on the concept of the Chewing the Fat podcast? What made you think, I'm going to start a podcast?
Well, the original idea actually came about in 2020. We were all shut down.
Yeah.
And so as someone who deals with depression and anxiety, that started kind of bubbling to the top because we couldn't go anywhere. We couldn't interact. We couldn't be with people. And I felt like I had something I wanted to say because I knew there were other people that felt that way, and I wanted to make sure that they knew that they were not alone in feeling that way. But being in a radio background and having done television, I kind of put all these perfectionist hurdles in my way before I actually started the podcast. It took me a year to hit record on the podcast because I wanted the perfect website and logo and microphone.
Which you have, by the way. Oh my gosh, your website's fantastic.
Thank you. But once I finally had a friend who said, hey, if you don't hit record, no matter how good your message is, no one's going to hear it if you don't hit record and put it out there.
Yeah.
So that's how it started. I started in June of 2021, and the premise was all from this quote from J.R.R. Tolkien. It's like, how do we keep the darkness at bay? I believe it's in the small everyday acts of kindness and love.
Yeah.
It's something that Gandalf said to the hobbits. But I was like, you know what? That's what it is. This is a kindness. This is an act of love, putting this out into the world so that people realize they're not alone. They're not stuck in that darkness.
Well, you've just led me to something else that I wanted to bring up because that is the premise, you know, and when you have a guest be on, you have that little thing. We're going to talk about this, what do you do to stay out of the darkness when you feel yourself in it? What are some of the interesting strategies that you've heard from some of your guests?
I think the most surprising one that I've heard is people say, sometimes I have to sit in it. Sometimes I have to let the darkness kind of come in and really look at it in the face to realize what it is. Not in an intention to stay in it, but to recognize it so that I can then move through it. I think that was very surprising to me. As someone who, my act of trying to get out of the darkness is focusing on other things, not to kind of put it away, but to not spiral into it myself, not to tumble into that well. So I'll I'm a big fan of Lego, so I'll put Lego together. Or I took up a pottery class, or acting. I memorized lines and poems and things like that to focus a different part of my brain on something that I actually enjoy. But yes, having folks say that they sometimes sit in it to recognize it before moving through it was very surprising to me.
I guess it's sort of like sometimes when you're nervous about something and you know, things can go different ways. Sometimes I will just have to go ahead and let myself, okay, what is the worst case scenario?
Yeah.
And I'll let it play out in my head, worst case scenario. And then you open your eyes and you're like, okay, well, I'm not dead.
Yeah.
I'm still here.
Yeah.
And you see, maybe when you let it go through, then you can move on. Okay, that's one alternative, but I'm not going to pick that one.
Right.
I'm going to try another one. So maybe it has something to do with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
One thing that I thoroughly enjoyed, and I have said this to several people when I was on your show, was that we had such an easy conversation. I could have talked so much longer, but what I loved about it is that we had a narrow desk between us, and we were facing each other, and we both had our headsets on. But the space was so good. There was something about facing each other and not being, when I've done radio before, it's like usually there's like a big table and somebody's there and here and here. We were just so close. And I think that made the conversation so easy. And it's also, you know, this is kind of weird on this couch because I feel like
You're talking
we're
over your shoulder.
doing like this to people, you know, we don't have a good angle to be at. And so as someone who talks to people all the time, I was surprised by the physicality of just the way we were, how easy it was to talk to you. You're a great conversationalist and you're such a good listener. You have a little icon on your, if you listen to the podcast, if you go to the website, tell me what that little coffee cup is.
Oh, that's Buy Me a Coffee.
Buy you a coffee?
It's what it's called. It's a platform kind of like a Patreon, but it's so that you can help support the podcast. You can buy me a coffee, and that way it allows me to pay for the stuff every month to keep the podcast going.
And as a guest, I got a mug in the mail, and it says, I chewed the fat with Big Robb, and I love that. That was such a nice gift, and it's got all your information there.
Yeah.
Your website also has your archive, so you can go back and you can listen to other people who have done the podcast with you.
Yeah.
And it's just a really fun way to learn about folks here in our community, and behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Some of the behind the scenes things about people that you don't know.
Yeah.
And I love it. Anybody that you are looking to down the road who you'd like to have on your podcast?
I mean, I have a list of people that I want to have on there, and you know, the thing is everybody has a story to tell. People that are on people that are on television, people that are not, people that worked in radio. I mean, those are a lot of people that I knew that I'm asking to be on the podcast. But there's some people on there. You know, I'd love to have. Someone on there that is maybe a little bit more celebrity.
Yeah.
I mean, I have some actor friends that have been on there that are now on shows like Only Murders in the Building and things like that, and folks that are on Broadway. But I have like Danielle Pinnock is somebody I'd love to talk to. She's on the series Ghosts. And then there are a few other folks that I've kind of got in that upper echelon, like the dream list of having on there.
Awesome. And it's so easy with a podcast because they can do a Zoom with you. They don't have to be sitting like you and I were. Exactly.
Absolutely.
Well, Robb Smith, you and I could talk for the rest of the show. Thank you for being with us and sharing a little bit about Chew the Fat. You can listen to Chewing the Fat with Big Robb on Spotify, Audible, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Coming up, Dancing with the Augusta Stars. How some local folks are waltzing, two-stepping, and tangoing their way to the Mirrorball Trophy, all for a good cause.